Great. All right. So welcome very much to everybody. My name is Letitia Smiley, and I am going to be one of your hosts for tonight's launch of the JustFOOD Action Plan. We are so pleased that you could join us tonight. It's about thanking you for all your hard work and support to get to this very important milestone, Part A of the JustFOOD Action Plan. On screen is our agenda for tonight. And can everybody hear me okay? Is the volume good? All right, just let me know if I'm yelling at you. Save that for at home, right, Rich? So on screen is the opening or the agenda for tonight. We're going to be having an opening ceremony, sharing some amazing food from R&B Kitchen, learn about exciting work to increase food justice and sovereignty in our communities, and speak to the JustFOOD Action Plan and our next steps for moving from recommendation to tangible, on-the-ground, positive change. We will also have a small amount at the end of the presentations for a quick Q&A, but also just recognize that this is the first of hopefully many conversations to come. So if you have any questions about the action plan, please grab one of us with a name tag. And we'll also be happy to chat with you tonight if we have some time, but also set up time to chat later if you would like to have a deeper conversation. If you're not currently receiving emails from the JustFOOD team and would like to sign on to support the work, we do have an email list on the clipboard on the table there that has some more information about our plan. There are also a few bound copies of the plan. Please take one if it's of help to you in your food action. As well, our website, justfoodhalifax.ca, has lots of information on the action plan and community work, with lots more being added all the time. So we are going to be recording and live streaming tonight's presentation. And so we also want to welcome those who are joining us online or who are watching this after effect. Welcome. We are streaming the event over Zoom, so there will be a little bit of a break in the event for those who are joining us online when we're here having our time to enjoy the food. So you'll see a pause sort of during this time, and we're going to reconvene at about 5 to 7 and start the session back up. So as I mentioned, we are going to be recording tonight's session. This will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website. And the recording will be focused on the speaker, so don't worry that you're going to be the center of attention. Okay, so before we begin, a few housekeeping things to share. In the event of the fire, or emergency, we're to exit out where you came in, head through the glass doors, and head over to the Dalhousie parking lot. The closest washrooms for the hall are just up the stairs and over to your right, sort of behind the half door. There is also an accessible washroom which can be accessed through the inside ramp. So our goal for the food for tonight was to support a local food entrepreneur and to offer hearty, yummy food and to try as much as possible to reduce our food waste. So please use the appropriate source separation to keep any kind of food or organics out of the waste stream. If there are any meals left, we do have someone on hand who's going to be quickly taking them to the out of the cold shelter, so no meals will be wasted. So the meetings, work, and envision goals of the JustFOOD Action Plan take place on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. We make this land acknowledgement to recognize Indigenous claims to unceded territory and Indigenous lineages of agriculture. We do so in order to express respect to the land and elders who were here before us. Indigenous peoples were growing, harvesting, hunting, fishing, and collecting food in a healthy, sustainable, and just way for generations before colonization. We specifically acknowledge the Mi'kmaq for their stewardship of the land and the importance of consciously working towards reconciliation in our work. This acknowledgement challenges us to ask questions that bear directly on this project, such as how to link to Mi'kmaq governance, what is the role of treaty, and what implications does this work have for the land and sea that local food comes from? In mainstream settler culture, it's easy to forget how our region nourishes us. Important knowledge on the problems that we are trying to understand and the solutions that we are trying to develop exist in traditionally marginalized communities. As we consider how to increase access to food and strengthen the food system, We acknowledge the need to steward our region wisely by learning from Indigenous wisdom and values of ecological health, social justice, and food sovereignty. So we are honored this evening that Charlotte Bernard will be opening the Just Food launch. Charlotte is a Mi'kmaq matriarch, born in Spaghetti, Nova Scotia, now living in Chibuktuk, Nova Scotia. A nurse by trade, Charlotte has worked for the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre for many years in several roles, working with the urban Indigenous community. Charlotte is a mother to 3 phenomenal daughters and 2 grandchildren, whom she considers her greatest accomplishments. Her favorite pastimes include beading earrings, Indigenous crafting, and she is an avid hugger, as the JustFOOD team can attest. So I pass it over to Charlotte.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad I didn't fall coming down. That was one of my fears. I made my daughter promise if I did fall that I would be covered. Anyways, it's an honor to be here. And through this action plan, they had come to our Mi'kmaq Child Development Center and spoke to parents and community members and asking their opinion. And for me, when I think of food at our Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, any programs we run, we always feed. Feed puts everybody on the same level. You all eat together. We all need to eat. And I know in my life, I was raised in Shubenacadie, and there were times in my life that I didn't have enough food to eat. So I grew up kind of valuing food. And, to have to come to our community and ask us our opinion, it really made my heart proud. And when I look through the books and I look through ours, I was telling Ben, I was just so pleased that they took what we said and they made it workable. They made it promising. And they took our words and our stuff and they used them, which I'm very proud. So I thank you all for being here. I'm just going to do a quick blessing, and then I'll get out of your way and we can eat. All right. Can you all stand, please? Or if you can't, please don't hurt yourself. I get that if you can't. Dear Creator, thank you so much for your blessings and for bringing us here together for this action plan. A lot of work has gone into this, Creator, and we recognize that a lot of steps and a lot of places and a lot of people have brought this all together. Please, Creator, bless everyone who's been involved, from the workers to the community members to where we're going in the future. Also, Creator, can you bless everybody here and all their family members that they go home to at the end of the day? Our safe place is our family members. So please bless everybody there also. So I thank you. Nogama, all my relations. Thank you.
Great, so don't get too comfortable because we're going to kick this party off right and start with food. So we invite you to take a minute to grab a meal. We have a choice between chicken and chickpea, which kind of works out well. There's also some spa waters, so we have cucumber and lemon water and some plain water for you as well as some local apples, which are still really great this time of year. So we have from now until about 7 o'clock, a couple minutes before 7, for you to grab a meal, to enjoy, maybe take a minute to take a look at some of the posters or have a chat if you have a few minutes. Great, okay, we'll begin. I hope everybody enjoyed their meal from R&B Kitchen. They're just located, smells great. They're located on Main Street in Dartmouth, close to the Black Cultural Centre, so please check them out. They do serve meals, it's not just catering, so please support our local businesses. And obviously you must be interested because it looks like people are still here. You didn't eat and run, so thank you for staying with us. We're going to move into the part of the evening where we're going to have the true experts speak to you about the work that they're doing in the field. So our first community speaker this evening is Stacey Gomez. Stacey co-founded and currently leads No One is Illegal, Nova Scotia's migrant workers program. This is the first program of its kind in Nova Scotia, which aims to inform, support, and organize migrant farm and seafood workers throughout the province. Stacey has been engaged in movements for racial and gender justice, corporate accountability, and migrant rights, in roles ranging from frontline service provision, coordinating grassroots campaigns, advocating nationally for policy change, and more. Stacey holds an undergraduate degree in international development and globalization from the University of Ottawa, as well as an MA in development studies from York University. Welcome to Stacey.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you tonight. I'm happy to share with you about some of the work that we're engaged in and how we've been collaborating with JustFOOD. So as mentioned, I work with an organization called No One is Legal Nova Scotia, our migrant workers program. We work with migrant workers in the agriculture and seafood sector throughout Nova Scotia. And we really are the first organization to be in Nova Scotia providing support to migrant workers, information, and sometimes that is providing support in emergency situations when there are workplace abuses, building friendships, and I'm going to talk a bit more about some of the specific examples of the work that we've done around food. So migrant workers in the agricultural sector come to Nova Scotia under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. And many come through the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, are in Nova Scotia for up to 8 months of the year, are on a closed work permit. So this means that they can only legally work for the employer who is named on their contract, on their work permit rather. And they also make minimum wage, which currently is $13.60. Work long hours. And when we think about migrant workers in relation to food justice, we are talking about workers both as producers within the food system, as well as consumers or people who are consuming food within the food system. So each year there are about a few thousand workers, upwards of 2,000, who come to Nova Scotia. Some have been coming for over 30 years, over 40 years, and unfortunately do not have a specific program for permanent residence. And so this is part of the vulnerability faced by migrant workers. And in our collaboration with JustFOOD, we are really looking at food from a systems perspective. As I mentioned, there are migrant workers throughout Nova Scotia, many in rural areas, but some of the products that we eat here in Nova Scotia are produced by migrant workers. So they're an important part of this conversation. And so for this reason, we also collaborated with JustFOOD to hold consultations with migrant workers, to hear from migrant workers what they would like to see within a food policy. And so we are happy to see a number of the issues that were raised to be included in the recommendations. So too often we hear of migrant workers going hungry, yet we know that the agriculture system in Nova Scotia and across Canada would not operate without migrant workers. So that seems profoundly unfair. So some of the work that we do, I'll just share a few examples. In addition to providing emergency support when there are situations of abuse, we do education on migrant worker rights. We do outreach. We talk to migrant workers throughout the province so that they know that there is an organization that they can turn to for support. And In addition, we've organized a few initiatives such as a food box initiative. Last year, we distributed over 300 food boxes with culturally relevant foods to migrant workers throughout the province. And primarily, we're talking about migrant workers who are Caribbean and Mexican, as well as other nationalities. We actually just recently had our second community meal. So this is a community meal aimed at bringing together migrant workers and Nova Scotians to share a space, to share food, and to hopefully build friendships. And we hear from workers, you know, there's, for some workers, this is really the first time that they've seen such an event happen. And as it states in our banner over here, one of the key messages of our work is that migrant workers are part of our community. You know, we hear and we have heard throughout the pandemic about essential workers, but we not only value migrant workers because of their labor, we value them because of their humanity, as we do everyone within our community. Lastly, I will share one other thing that we have been able to do thanks to the support of everyday, regular people within our community. We have a Migrant Solidarity Fund. It's really the only fund that we know of that exists in the province that can provide some support in emergency situations. So we definitely are really thankful for everyone who has contributed to that. So that, in case something comes up and there is some financial support that is needed in the short term on an emergency basis, that support is there. Because otherwise there's not a lot of supports for migrant workers within our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacey. So our next presenter is Lisa Roberts, and Lisa likes nothing more than working with collaborators to make good things happen as the Executive Director of Nourish Nova Scotia. She has previous experience as a nonprofit executive director and a master's in development economics. Lisa has promoted local food as a journalist telling stories from school, gardens, and farms, as a community organizer planning meals and food safety training, and as an MLA representing Halifax Needham, but also traveling across the province in various critical roles. She is an avid gardener and is especially fond of edible perennials like rhubarb, chives, and raspberries, which she sends her kids out to pick. So please welcome Lisa to the floor.
Thank you so much, and it's delightful to see people in the room who I've known in different locations, some of them at some of those community meals in the north end of Halifax. I hosted quite a few at Veith House where I was executive director, and other folks who I have spent a lot of time with in the about 7 months since I became, I'm just going to check this up because it's not going to do anything else. Since I became executive director at Nourish Nova Scotia, there's a number of folks here, including Letitia, who I have spent hours with dreaming up a Halifax Regional Food Hub. And that work has been the epitome of like the fun that happens when people gather together to try to work collaboratively to address something that we need in our community. So just briefly, this is related to item number 39 under supporting infrastructure and production distribution of food, which is under the JustFOOD Action Plan. But there have been initially 4 and now 6 members of a working group who have come together to envision a Halifax Regional Food Hub, along with Flourish, who are a cooperative of wonderful community development consultants. And I'll say, so Mandy Chapman is here from the Mobile Food Market. Mobile Food Market has been there for all those conversations. JustFOOD, Farmers Markets of Nova Scotia, Feed Nova Scotia joined us a while ago, and Sue Kelleher is here, as well as Nick Jennery. Sue's charged with leading some innovation work for Feed Nova Scotia. And also recently, Geeta Ramas joined us from the Novalee Kitchen and Market. But the reason why Nourish is there, so Nourish is a nonprofit organization and charity that is celebrating our 10th year in 2023. Our mission is to support the healthy nourishment of children and youth in partnership with schools and communities. So our initial focus was really as the provincial school food partner to both public health and the Department of Education as universal school breakfast programs rolled out across Nova Scotia. But increasingly, we're extending ourselves into community, and part of extending ourselves into community is also collaborating with other community organizations to figure out, how does food get where it needs to be? How does affordable, local, healthy food get where it needs to be? So from Nourish's perspective, we do work a lot in collaboration with schools. In Halifax Regional Centre for Education, more than half of schools don't have cafeterias. Some schools that do have cafeterias don't have anybody operating the cafeterias. Some schools that do have cafeterias, even the schools that do have cafeterias, don't have a lot of storage for food. And so they actually need food to arrive at the kitchen door. And so that is the reason that we are part of the working group for the Halifax Regional Food Hub, because we recognize that there is a significant list of small and medium purchasers, wholesale buyers potentially. Mandy Chapman and the Mobile Food Market serve some of them now, shelters, schools, nonprofit organizations that are doing food programming. They don't want to have their staff running around shopping flyers, buying food, on their lunch breaks. And at the same time, there are small and medium producers throughout mainland Nova Scotia who might produce more if they had an easy way to connect with customers. And as much as I love going to farmers markets, coming into farmers markets and standing behind a stand, you've probably had that experience that I have had as a customer, where you go to the farmers market and you almost don't want to meet the eye of the person standing at the stand, because I already bought my carrots, or I already bought my garlic, or I already bought my blueberries, and that they're standing there waiting for a sale. Well, they would rather be on their property, maybe producing more, except we make it hard for them to connect with the customers. So the idea with the Halifax Food Hub is to establish a space that is easy to access for trucks coming in from out of the city, where there can be an inventory system, where we can, with a hub manager, connect with up to 20 different or more purchasers, interested purchasers, and that would include restaurants who are able to, really support farmers' incomes, and connect them with a whole long list of producers who could, if their goods were aggregated together, help to meet the need of those wholesale purchasers. We know from some conversations with restaurants that they're managing, in some cases, dozens of accounts. So you can imagine the inefficiency when you combine the producer driving around to a whole bunch of kitchen back doors, and then the kitchens having a whole bunch of different people showing up at their back door. There's a lot of inefficiency there that a hub could really help with, to ultimately strengthen our food system overall. So fingers crossed, with some more collaboration and some support, we hope, from the provincial government, we will stand this up in the next year, and we'll see the impact for both sides, or maybe there's many sides of the equation, including those who want to purchase, and actually many of the folks who want us to purchase are then they're serving students, they're serving clients, they're serving patients in some cases. So yeah, many people can benefit if we come together and make it a little bit easier by adding that piece of local food infrastructure. And it is important enough that it's part of the Just Food Action Plan. So thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sure there's some trick to this. Can you hear me okay? Great, so thank you very much, Lisa. So our next speaker for this evening is Wendie Wilson. Wendie is a mother, educator, artist, writer, and cultural advocate. Born and raised in Shubucktuk, Halifax, Wendie is a descendant of African Nova Scotians who have had history in the province for more than 400 years. She has a keen interest in documenting the food history of this distinct cultural group and collecting the narratives connected to Canada's oldest Black cuisine. Wendie is dedicated to elevating the profile of the community and promoting the culture. Utilizing her master's in Afrocentric leadership has allowed her to view the world through an African-centered lens. Wendie grew up in one of the largest public housing projects in Nova Scotia and has witnessed firsthand the effects of food insecurity and how food is directly connected to an innate sense of well-being on multiple levels. Throughout her 20 years as an educator in the public school system, Wendie has seen the impact food has on learning. Currently, Wendie is an executive staff officer for BIPOC engagement and advocacy with the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, a part-time instructor in the BED program at Mount St. Vincent University, and a co-founder of the African Nova Scotian Freedom School. She has a passion for food culture and for food sovereignty and enjoys her work with Food Secure Canada, JustFood's Black Food Sovereignty Working Group, the Pan-Canadian Black Food Sovereignty Caucus, the Indigenous and Black Food Sovereignty Circle, and the Coalition for Healthy School Food Nova Scotia. So I'd like to turn the mic over and say welcome to Wendie.
Good evening, everyone. I always have to take a look and see who's in the audience. I'm sitting in the front, so it's hard to twist my neck, but thank you for coming, and a big thank you for supporting food in Nova Scotia, food for different sectors of folks in Nova Scotia. I didn't really know what I would want to share with you in, I have 10 minutes. And this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. This is something that I could talk about for days on end. So what part of food justice, food sovereignty, food injustice, food insecurity, food security do I want to share with you? Let's see. I'm going to try to stick to my notes and give you some idea of why this work is so important and why this work is so timely. It's very timely, and how I came to do this work. So I am primarily an educator. I've been an educator for 20 years in a public school system. I worked at the department. I'm now with the NSTU. And I have firsthand seen the impact of food insecurity, food swamps, food apartheid, and how that works for some of the communities in Nova Scotia, in particular the African Nova Scotian community that I'm from, which is in the inner city of Halifax. My mother grew up in the same community as well. So this kind of led me to doing work with the Coalition for Healthy School Food. It also led me to this food sovereignty work, and you know, I would hear that term being spoken about quite often, is that food security. That's what we want. We want people to be food secure. And you know, at the time, without knowing the impacts of what food security was and food insecurity, I thought that, you know, that sounds like something that's a reachable goal, until I had the opportunity to work with some of the most amazing folks in this country, in every province and territory, working toward Indigenous and Black food sovereignty, that I learned that it's not really food security that we want. I see myself as a person who is food secure. I have gainful employment, and I can go to the grocery store. I have a vehicle that I can use to shop around. I can grow my own vegetables. I have access to good and healthy food. And I have enough education to know, what types of foods are harmful and what types of foods, give me energy during my working day. And for me, that's not good enough. Because at any point in time, we all know with the inflation rates, with stoppage or shortage in the food supply in the chain, that I'm not really in control of my food at all. To be honest with you, I don't even know where my food comes from most of the time, unless I do a little bit of research. And the way that I grew up is that my parents, my mom and my dad both cooked. My mom, she made all the traditional meals throughout the week, and my dad did the night lunch and the big Christmas dinner and special occasions. And so she never used recipes. She only cooked from whole ingredients. And so we kind of had an idea at that point, like we were sourcing our food locally. My father's parents would have done the same thing. My grandfather, born in 1896, probably would have never grown up, visited a grocery store. The food came locally. They foraged, they fished, they hunted, they gathered, they cultivated food, they learned how to trap food. And so to me, that is being in control of your food and being in control of your food systems, right? So the goal for us in the Pan-Canadian Black Food Sovereignty Network, as well as the Indigenous and Black Food Sovereignty Circle, is to make communities more sovereign so that they are in control of where their food comes from. They're processing their own food. They're not dependent on the market in order to get and gain what they need. And also the utilities to cook and prepare those meals. So one of the other reasons that I got involved in this work was because food does not solve the issue of food insecurity. All right. We have, food banks and other supplementary ways of getting students and our community's food. But the issue with people being food insecure is that they typically don't have enough income to buy the foods that they need, right? And the food literacy and all of those other pieces and all those other variables. So I think it's important that we really think about putting the control of food and food systems back in the hands of the people that are consuming the food. And I had a chance to work throughout many schools in the Halifax Dartmouth area, and the community that I come from. I worked in that school for 12 years, and I saw the impact of and the correlation between what students were eating for lunch, what they weren't eating for lunch, and reading scores, reading levels, and math data as well. And so being able to prepare students for their learning day is extremely important. I see how food impacts, social determinants of health and employment, and in particular, physical health. There's a study that was done, 510,000 folks took part in this study at the University of Toronto, that said people who are severely food insecure die 9 years prior to those who are not. So this is, for me, this is a matter of life and death. That this is something that we have to make sure that everyone has the skills and the knowledge and the capacity to be able to make choices that will, in the long run, benefit them. This is something that we have to think about how we help to provide those platforms and those avenues for folks to be able to do for themselves, right? And in the African Nova Scotian community, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for an agency. And so I had the opportunity to be part of a working group with 3 other African Nova Scotians, where we had time to work with, Letitia and Ben and more, just talking about the things that were important to our community as African Nova Scotian, and also the broader Black community in Nova Scotia or in Halifax as well. And it was quite enlightening. We had people that are in working at a community farm, at the Black Cultural Center. There was myself coming in primarily as an educator, learning more about food and learning more about the impacts of food on not just our physical health, but how food impacts our spiritual health and how it impacts our mental health as well. The way that we collect food is very important. The way that we convene around food is very important. And so for me, the real connection as a cultural advocate is the connection between land and culture, and the connection between food and culture, right? How we can make those links between food and culture. And so I'm really excited about what the upcoming months will bring. We're trying to actualize some of those recommendations that we thought were important to elevating our community over the next, 6 or 7 months or so, and taking, the theory and putting it into practice, and doing that with the support of the broader community. I think planting seeds is revolutionary. It is revolutionary. You think about how my people came to this province 8 generations ago. And one of the things that we took with us when we couldn't take anything is we took our seeds, right? We took the seeds and we plaited it in our hair. We braided the seeds in our hair as we were stolen from the continent and brought across the Middle Passages. The okra seeds and the rice and the corn and all those seeds, anything that we could bring with us, because that's how important food is, right? And Michael Twitty says it best. He says, our food is our flag. Or sorry, our food is our flag. So when you think about, if someone told you what foods they eat, or their traditional foods, or their culture foods, you have a pretty good idea of where they might come from, right? Even when, we leave our places of origin and we travel, one of the things that we have a really difficult time giving up, I believe we never give it up, is our cultural food. Is the food that we love, the foods that we grew up on. No matter where we go in the world, we're always looking for those foods. So I was so happy that you got a taste of some African Nova Scotian food tonight. Over 52 Black communities throughout Nova Scotia. And our food has many influences, right? We do have a cuisine. We have a repertoire of recipes. We have traditional food. We have influences from the Caribbean spices, which you tasted tonight. We also have some African methodologies, the way we cook and prepare our foods. We have the soul food, right? The soul food culture. That's where our ancestors would have migrated from the southern United States in through Birchtown, Nova Scotia, and migrated throughout the rest of Nova Scotia, populating over 52 Black communities. But then we have the food from this place, right? So traditional African Nova Scotian food might be salt cod fish cakes and baked beans, cornbread. You might see a boiled dinner. And, when you think about traditional baked beans and fish cakes and a boiled dinner, you think about Nova Scotia, you think about the Maritimes, Cape Breton, Newfoundland. But that's our food too. So with our boiled dinner, we would, instead of having your corned beef, we would have pigtails. And in our baked beans, we might throw a ham hock in to flavor the meat, right? So it's just a different spin, a different alternative, and we use what we had. And so our food comes from everywhere, and we're really proud of it. It's something that I've been documenting just really over the last 6, 7 years, I want everyone to know about African Nova Scotian culture. I want them to know what our traditional food is, our traditional music, our traditional clothing, because that's something that was actually taken away from us. And so it's something that we've gone back to, is trying to remember those things. And I also want to say that we have a real respect and connection to the Indigenous people of Turtle Island, of this place. One of the other things or repertoire of items in our cuisine would be traditional Indigenous food. I grew up on smelts and eels and gaspareau and rabbits and deer meat, and those would have been the skills that would have been taught to my ancestors when they came to this province, and those survival skills that would have been taught to them by the Mi'kmaq people in Nova Scotia. So it's a real repertoire of recipes and dishes, and it's something we're so proud of, and this work allows me to connect something that's so important to my mind, body, and spirit. It connects me to my culture. And I'll just say one last thing that is central to this passion of mine about African Nova Scotian food and culture and food sovereignty is economics, building business, right? Creating capacity in communities. And that's one of the things that we want to be able to do through the food plan, is build capacity and social economics and community economics using the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So I'm going to leave it at that. I said I could be all over the place, and I probably was, but hopefully you've taken something from that, and we'll have more of an opportunity to chat at the end. All right. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Wendie. And as Wendie mentioned, we do have some time for Q&A for our speakers and the Just Food team after we move to our presentation. So please just join me just for another round of applause for our amazing speakers. And a thank you to them for really bringing words on a page to community. So at this point, I'm going to be turning over the mic to my colleagues on the Just Food team to speak a little bit more about the plan itself. And I do notice that I think all of the hard copies have gone. So please, if you didn't get a hard copy tonight, contact us and we'll find a way to get you one, because we do have a few more printouts. And you can always print more out. So please just let us know. JustFoodHalifax.ca, you'll find our website address.
All right. Everybody hear me here? Oh. Still hear me? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Let's give another round of applause for our speakers, Stacey, Lisa, and Wendie. It's both inspiring and challenging to hear from them, so thank you so much. My name is Ben Lemfers. I'm a community food coordinator at Ecology Action Centre. And I'm pleased to be here with my colleagues, Laura Belusi from Public Health, and you've met Letitia Smiley from HRM. Thanks, Letitia. Also here with my colleague, Maura Vale, who is a community food coordinator at Ecology Action Centre as well. So as you know, we're here to celebrate a milestone and to share with you the development of the JustFOOD Action Plan. The Halifax Food Policy Alliance has been working towards this for many years, and the three of us would like to share about the plan's development and next steps, and then we'll join our speakers for a little bit of question and answer. So formed in 2013, the Halifax Food Policy Alliance, or HFPA, is a coalition of organizations from across the food system, working together toward a vision of a Halifax region where no one is hungry, where food and people are celebrated, where the local economy is strong and the environment is protected for generations to come. The HFPA is co-chaired by the Halifax Regional Municipality and the Ecology Action Centre. The steering committee includes member organizations such as Nova Scotia Public Health, Feed Nova Scotia, community health boards from around the region, Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture, the Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie, and Halifax Public Libraries. And for the past 10 years, the HFPA has been building capacity and momentum towards an action plan through 3 influence areas: supporting healthy change, leading informed action, and convening community. So what you see on the screen now are some of the partners involved in creating JustFOOD. It's a pretty impressive bunch. All of them have committed to collaborating to make the plan's recommendations a reality. What you don't see on the screen, but is reflected in the plan's recommendations, are the thousands of community members who shared their vision for our food system and what the JustFOOD Action Plan should prioritize. Moving forward, we will continue relying on community partners to identify how they can be involved in moving from recommendations to implementation, to test and refine the strategies, assessing what is realistic and impactful, and to ensure key actors live up to their commitments and that the plan is having a positive impact. Now, you might be wondering, what is a food action plan? Food action plans, also known as food strategies, offer a coordinated set of recommendations and require collective action and collaboration between government, community, service agencies, and businesses. A food action plan is a practical tool to identify what actions are needed to achieve positive food systems change based on a common vision. And these plans set goals for what we want to achieve and identify actions while naming who's going to do what and what resources are needed to make this a reality, such as funding, policy change, new programs, or better support for existing services. I'm going to share some context on the current state of household food insecurity in HRM and the state of our regional food system. So as you can see on the slide, HRM has a household food insecurity rate that's higher than both the provincial and the national average, where roughly 18.6% of households are food insecure. While our region has a rich history of local food production and self-reliance, we also have a critically high rate of household food insecurity. Our food system is incredibly vulnerable to climate change pressures, to disruptions in international supply chains. We also see a systemic lack of support for food system workers, including migrant workers, our farmers, producers, distributors, processors, and small-scale food retailers, as well as a mismanagement of food system waste. Part A of the plan recognizes the significant gaps in our food system and establishes the rationale and local context for why coordinated effort is needed to increase access to good food, to strengthen our food system, and to promote a more equitable, just, and resilient food system. With rising costs of essential goods and services dramatically outpacing incomes, food security continues to grow. Food inflation is at a 40-year high, and we're seeing this every day in our communities, with service providers across the region reporting unprecedented demand and need for food. As Wendie pointed out, income is the key determinant of food insecurity. We know that employment does not guarantee household food security. Low wages, precarious employment can make it difficult for many to afford the food they need. The plan advocates for better income supports to address the root cause of food insecurity and recommends more dignified models for food access, such as social supermarkets. We also know the highest rates of food insecurity in Canada are found among households that identify as Indigenous or Black. People identifying as white have a lower prevalence of food insecurity than any other group, demonstrating the serious health consequences of Canada's long and ongoing history of colonialism and systemic racism. We don't yet have data on how racial disparities impact food insecurity across HRM, but we can expect to see the same trends, where white households are far less food insecure than Black, Indigenous, and racialized households. So there's a lot of issues presented here, but they should serve as motivation to act collectively. We need innovative programs and bold policy interventions that will create lasting change. I'm going to pass it off to Laura to share more about the plan's development and how we can collaborate to address these challenges.
Good, thank you. So thanks, Ben, for providing all that background information. So the Just Food Action Plan is comprised of a Part A and a Part B. So Part A of the plan includes the background and context for why a food strategy is needed in our region. It describes what we did and heard during community engagement and establishes 56 recommendations for food system transformation. Just earlier this month, Part A of the plan was endorsed by Halifax Regional Council. And so, and so what's next is Part B. And so that will include formal commitments to action from food system partners. Essentially, it will establish the implementation strategies that are required to make the recommendations in Part A a reality. So this will include establishing budgets, people power, programs, and policies, as well as performance measurements so we can keep track of all the progress we make. You can see here that this is a timeline of all the work that has occurred. So this really is a decade's worth of work, as it all began in 2013 with the Halifax Food Policy Alliance. By 2017, the Halifax Food Charter was created. And then in 2019, both the Food Charter and the co-development of the JustFOOD Action Plan were endorsed by Halifax Regional Council. And following that endorsement is when we began the engagement in 2020, and then it was complete by 2022. The action plan was built on community engagement. Community engagement was made successful through creating welcoming spaces for diverse voices to be heard, often having sessions hosted by trusted community partners. Sessions were designed to meet people where they're at and enable full and equitable participation across communities. So this enabled people to be involved in the ways they wanted to be, and ensured community concerns and aspirations were directly reflected, understood, and considered in the plan recommendations. The intention of this engagement was to profile the local food system, identify measurable goals, priorities, and recommendations, strengthen relationships and readiness for action among key partners, and motivate community members to take part in food system change. Initially, the engagement focused on learning about each other and our food system to inform the foundations of the plan. And then it was used to identify gaps and opportunities and refine the proposed actions within the draft of the various drafts of the plans. Overall, we engaged the 29 communities, community-based organizations, 6 provincial partners, 9 HRM business units, and thousands of HRM residents. Broadly speaking, the outcome of the engagement highlighted the need for a comprehensive food strategy that acts to create a more equitable food system, addresses the root cause of food insecurity, localizes the food system, disrupts colonialism and systemic racism, and builds community capacity and food system resilience. So this really is an incredible milestone, and it's the result of years of advocacy, support, and work from all of you and others in our food shed. So we actually wanted to take this opportunity just to say thanks to all of you who helped make Part A of the JustFOOD Action Plan a reality. It wouldn't have been possible without you, and your expertise, guidance, and profound support as food champions made this work possible. So thank you. So now we're just going to quickly kind of go over some of the key principles of the plan. So within the plan, all recommendations are categorized under one of 6 principles. Governance actions are about facilitating collaboration across agencies, establishing governance bodies, aligning policies and practices, creating knowledge sharing tools, and measuring progress. The social and economic equity actions are about increasing community food sovereignty and shifting from a charitable model. They advocate for addressing the root causes of food insecurity, increase dignified access, and promoting food justice. And crucial to the social and economic equity recommendations were our African Nova Scotian, Indigenous, and disability advisory groups who led their sections of the plan and wrote much of the content. The African Nova Scotian recommendations promote the food culture, agricultural traditions, and work towards food sovereignty within African Nova Scotian and Black communities. And the Indigenous actions support access to traditional and healthy food, autonomy over food production and gathering, and the right to self-determination. The food production recommendations are about sustainable local food production through supports for producers, local food infrastructure, access to land for production, and shortened supply chains. The supply, processing, and distribution actions are about the sustainable, fair, reliable, and efficient movement of food within and into the region. The health, wellness, and resilience recommendations are about access to healthy food, sustainable diets, and strengthened ecological resistance. And lastly, we have our food waste recommendations, and those aim to sustainably manage and reduce food waste and loss. And I'm now going to hand it back over to Letitia, who's going to talk a bit about our year 1 priorities.
How's everybody doing? Do we need a little stretch or a little stand up for the seats? Okay, not too uncomfortable? You good? Okay. Oop, went too far there. Great. So as Laura mentioned, there are 56 recommendations in Part A organized under those 6 principles. And the next stage of our work together will focus on realizing the in progress and our year 1 recommendations. A high-level summary of the year 1 recommendations are on the screen and also on the poster. Where's the poster? Oh, sorry, just on the other side there, sorry. The 2 posters there. So many of our year 1 recommendations are designed to build our collective capacity for food system governance so that we can be working more effectively across jurisdictions and levels of government. They are also focused on creating resources to support food work in our communities, such as a food resource map and a virtual food hub. We will be creating strategies in year 1 to maximize municipal assets like land and buildings to offer food programs, grow food, support public food infrastructure, and community food access and distribution. The priorities are also about increasing municipal know-how for urban agriculture and support for community plots and community gardens, as well as creating a fund to support community-based food initiatives. So now that we've launched Part A, we will be supporting our working groups to develop the implementation strategies, moving from key recommendations to action. Our 5 working groups, which are seen at the top of the screen, bring together a range of community and government partners with both professional and lived experience. The working group model is a community-based, collective impact approach to implementing key recommendations while building greater capacity for food systems change in our region. Members will be fairly compensated, continuing to recognize the value of community wisdom and the preciousness of people's time and experience. On screen at the bottom are the components of the strategies that we will be supporting our working groups to consider. Strategies will be created for each of the priority recommendations, identifying the scope and objectives of the actions, identifying and building relationships with key actors, the costing out and timing for crucial resources such as infrastructure, people power, programs, budgets, etc., as well as exploring funding avenues and supporting and aligned initiatives that can help to advance the action. They will also work to secure formal commitments from the key players and develop performance measures to make sure that everything is heading in the right direction. So on screen are our next major steps towards Part B. When Regional Council approved Part A on March 7th, they also directed the Mayor to make HRM a signatory to the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. So step one, we have a little bit of a check mark there, which feels good. We're going to continue our work to establish our working groups, and we'll be supporting the working groups to create those implementation strategies and generate the commitments needed to advance our priority recommendations. We'll also be working to establish the Halifax Food Policy Council. And an important part of this work has been how do we move from a looser alliance model to an established food council that's well-resourced, which centers community power and equity, continues to create the space and the resources for ongoing food action and connections, and oversees the implementation and performance of the JustFOOD Action Plan. The intention is to report back to Council and other key signatories with the proposed strategies, a monitoring framework, and a budget ask for Part B by the end of 2023. So just a little bit more information about the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. It's an international protocol aimed at tackling food-related issues at the regional level. We are joining over 250 cities across the globe with the opportunity to share best practices, to access strategies for collaborations, to increase food security, to network with global experts, and to tap into recommendations and performance measures for food action. So I'm just going to invite the rest of the team up to the cozy chairs, and we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. We've got a few minutes left for that, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. Wow. Oh, got one. Okay.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out, yeah, I just have to hold it closer, how to ask this question. It's one of the questions I've been wanting to ask you for years as I followed this. I never see the word organic in anything. I'm very concerned that there's been no acknowledgement that I've seen of the damage that industrial farming has done to the planet and also Nova Scotia, and why is that missing?
I would certainly love to share with you sort of the specific sections of the plan that speak to the importance of sustainable agriculture practices, sustainable diets, building the resilience of our local food system. So that really is a crucial foundation of this plan. So I could run through the specifics when we have some time, if we'd maybe like to meet later, but it definitely is a crucial part of this plan. And that's why we're working with farmers markets of Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture, really looking at how best we can improve farming practices so that we protect this resource for generations to come.
Thank you. Is there a reason you chose not to ever use the word organic farming, organic food production?
I think we've used more regenerative agriculture has been the
Good.
terms that we've been
Great.
using. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't
Thank
think
you.
it's because we're opposed to the term organic. It's been more about regenerative agriculture practices.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi there, thank you for all those wonderful presentations. Really looking forward to what comes out of this over the next years. I'm curious about the maybe other jurisdictions that you look to in your research, or who may have already, maybe a few years ahead of us, and what some maybe inspiring examples of end result of what you've seen, maybe in other countries or other provinces that you'd love to see here in Halifax.
So the recommendations that you see in the plan kind of came from three key sources. A major one, of course, was community engagement and what community was telling us they wanted the plan to achieve. It was also from lots of work that the Food Policy Alliance had kind of done in the 10 years up to that. But another important component of that was a best practices scan of food policy strategies, food action across the country and internationally. So a lot of what you see in the recommendations does come from some of the exciting things that we saw coming from other regions. In terms of countries or regions that we would kind of hold up as shining examples, I mean, certainly Toronto has had a food policy council and a resourced sort of municipal public health work towards, building food into their public health policies and kind of creating capacity. I would say, sort of the Guelph area as well has really looked at circular economy and how do we sort of build in the tools, how do we build the capacity to have a more resilient food system? Team, any others? Yeah, Wendie.
I know with the Black Food Sovereignty Working Group, can you hear me? Yeah, my voice is big. I'll make it bigger. Can you hear me now? Oh, okay. Like this one's on. Yeah. Can you hear me all right? All right. So some of our inspiration and framework came from Toronto. Toronto is the first city in North America to have a Black Food Sovereignty Plan. So what we did is we used that as a foundation and a framework to create a Black Food Sovereignty Plan, potentially the framework for African, Nova Scotian, and Black Food Sovereignty Plan that would fit this place and that would be adaptable to the various Black communities in Nova Scotia. Through my work with Food Secure Canada, I was also able to consult and convene with many of the people that were very influential and had a huge impact in getting the plan up and running over the last year. So there are many folks throughout this country that have already been doing the work. The majority of the work is being done for Black food sovereignty in Ontario, and the folks in Quebec are really coming on board and very interested in the movement as well.
Okay. Hi. I'll keep this real quick, hopefully. It's rare to have such a wide range of voices and perspectives on one panel, so I will hope to make the best of that. For the panel, is there an aspect of this food plan that you're most excited about, either for yourself or your community?
No.
Hello. Thank you for the question. I think personally, I mean, maybe the team has other ideas, but I'm really excited about the working groups that we have going forward, the African Nova Scotian working group, getting going with them on taking the recommendations and moving them into actionable, really tangible things. So I'm really looking forward to that, and feel proud about those working groups and where they're going to take us.
And actually, two things that I'm really excited about. Very excited about the impact that this plan will have on education and the impact that it will have on business, and specifically Black and Indigenous businesses in the city.
I'm excited about so much in the plan, but one thing that I get really excited about is when we talk about the food hub, the regional food hub. I think that's just one of the best recommendations in there, and I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think in general, I think anytime we talk about food justice, it's important to talk about migrants within that system, really throughout the food system. So just having that opportunity for migrant worker voices to be part of this has been really important. And I think, in the recommendations, there are a number of aspects that would create more supports for migrant workers that currently don't exist. So even under, I believe it's 12G, collaborate with the municipality, the province, and community organizations to develop relief supports for farm workers in crisis. That currently doesn't exist. So that and other recommendations, that would be amazing to see them come to fruition. Thank you.
Oh.
Now, I think. I'm excited to see more work done on the mapping of community assets. Nourish recently reached out in a couple different directions to look for maps and resources that show kitchens that can be available for community cooking together kind of workshops. And yeah, the different resources that are available, I know they don't capture everything, but also I look forward to the resources being fully captured and mobilized. Like I think the food hub, I'm sorry, not the food hub, but the food plan, and especially with the working groups, which are continuously engaging folks, really create potential for resources that we do have in our community to be put to use, because people have folks with whom they're in relationship, with whom they can propose work. And that's the sort of stuff that Nourish has been developing, sets of recipes for baking, bulk baking of nutritious food, in sheet pans that can easily be cut into lots of portions, because we know that everybody is doing food work right now. It doesn't matter if you're a senior serving organization, if you're a recreation organization, if you're an environmental organization, everybody is doing food work. And so creating a framework where we can do it all a little bit easier and better and with more impact is really wonderful.
So I think we have time for, I think we had 2 more hands up for questions there. Is that great?
Thank you. Are there supports for established community garden? Oh, sorry. Are there supports for established community gardens that need to relocate for land use concerns?
There definitely is language in there around creating spaces, so opportunity for urban agriculture. So things such as a backyard sharing program. So if you have a backyard or if you have land that you would like to have food produced on, but you don't want to do it yourself, you could, we're trying to create some tools that would support and make it easy for you to have that kind of a relationship with a food producer. We are looking at how do we maximize municipal assets, how do we provide increased access to land for food. We're also looking at how to get some funding for our community gardens program to make it easier for people for organizations and community groups to have community gardens on municipal land, as well as trying to create a community plots program, which would be where we do kind of all of the heavy lifting and just create space that's sort of ready for people who want to garden. So definitely supporting community gardens is important. Okay. We'll talk, yeah.
Well, Letitia, Councillor David Hensby here. I just want to thank you and your team for bringing Part A to the council and getting that approved and moving forward, and looking forward to Part B and all the community outreaches going forward. I'm quite interested about the food waste and composting. There's a certain gentleman I should point to, David Wimberly, is in the crowd. This gentleman back in 1995, 94, 95, 96, when Halifax County was charged with bringing a solid waste resource strategy, Mr. Wimberly was the champion for composting. If it wasn't for him, we would not have the green carts that we have today across the municipality. So I'm looking forward to the strategy in regards to enabling and encouraging more composting. You know, the backyard compost was one thing and the green cart's another. But I'm also hoping that as we have our facilities that are producing or taking that organic material and producing a compost, I hope that we can get that back in the community and use it somehow more productively. It's one of the things that I don't think we underutilized, and hopefully we can move forward on that. So I'm looking forward to see more of that regeneration of agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. And food waste, you know, the reduction of food waste and the reduction of food loss is really important to this plan. I think there's a number of different initiatives that we're really excited about. The local or regional food hub would be really important for the efficient movement of food, so we can get food, you know, move it around in our community more easily. We're also in a partnership with the National Zero Waste Council around circular food economies and how do we reduce food waste, how do we divert food waste, and, you know, how do we value food waste better. So there's lots of stuff in there about food waste too. We have a member of our team who's pretty excited about composting and worms, so they love composting, which is great to have on the team. Great. I think maybe this might be our last question.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for really great and engaging presentations. I'm curious to know more about the producer involvement in developing the strategy, but also in its implementation. You mentioned the Federation of Agriculture is one partner, and I was really happy to hear the representation of No One is Illegal and migrant perspectives. But how were agri-commodity producers involved, and how will they be? And maybe this builds a bit on Lisa's point about the gap between what's produced and the people who might want to buy it. What kind of mechanisms are in place to build or tighten that supply chain or create those relationships?
Heather, you're leaving me with a tough question there. I mean, I would say, I think the team, correct me if I'm wrong, the connection to the more commercialized food system and that, you know, big ag, big food, I don't know if that's a term, but that has been a tough conversation for us to have. And that's what we're really hoping moving forward, is that we can create the momentum, we can create the case and, you know, create the relationships where we can have those conversations, because they are crucial players in this work. If they're on board, great. If not, that's okay. We'll just keep on working on how do we work together to localize our food system and strengthen our food system together. There were a number of different producers who were involved in our engagements, so our workshops were open and shared through the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture. So we did have a lot of producer perspectives in our engagement, and they're reflected in the recommendations. Does anybody want to talk about mechanisms, or are we okay? Or
maybe Letitia, I would just share from our experience with the Halifax Food Hub. Producers are like just incredibly busy. Like they're so stretched, and we, you know, the working group members that are creating the Halifax Regional Food Hub, we've consulted to the best of our ability, but also at a certain point, we had to recognize that we have to create something that is worth their time to engage with, rather than try to engage them throughout it, because they're just in the work so much. And I imagine that might be true at other levels as well. So I know I was at a South Shore Agriculture Day on Saturday, and there were a number of food producers in the room, but also there weren't a lot because they're at work. And to some extent, some of the intermediary organizations have to do some of the work so that it's easier for them to slot in and then experience either the increased ease or the increased income that allows them to have a little bit of space.
Yeah, I think we had more luck through the Federation of Agriculture engaging with smaller scale producers for sure. And probably the most common thread that we heard was the need for some kind of a food hub to aggregate and to store and to support distribution locally. So yeah, just want to add.
All right, I think we might have just gone past the 8 o'clock mark, so we're going to wrap things up. I just have a few thank yous to do before we end the evening. So I just wanted to say thank you to our hosts and our plan partners, the Halifax Public Libraries, for giving us this beautiful space and for supporting all of the logistics for tonight. So thank you so much to the libraries. Of course, to our community speakers, who I said really are the ones who bring these recommendations on a page to life and really have been key in helping us learn about what people's experiences are in our food shed. So a round of applause again for our speakers. So I also wanted to say a huge thank you to the Just Food team. So Ben, Moore, Laura, Nancy, Rachel, as well as Jen, Heather, and Allison, who've all been part of the team. We also have some honorary members, so Sophie and Joe, and Councillor Hensby, who've really helped to support us this evening. So thank you to the team. You really couldn't ask for a more passionate, respectful, and capable team. Thank you. Great. And finally, a huge thank you to you, those of you in the audience, those of you who are joining us online, and others who've been with us for all steps or some of the steps in this journey. Systems change for increased access to good food and a stronger food system requires us to continue working together to agitate for change and to advance the recommendations to see on the ground positive action and change. Please keep sharing your wisdom, your energy, your frustrations, your dreams, and your voice as we move into the next stage, because this is your action plan. I said I wasn't going to do it. If you haven't done so already, if you haven't had a chance to already, please add your name to the mailing list, visit justfoodhalifax.ca, and continue planting the seeds, because the more, the mightier. So thank you everybody so much for coming out tonight. Thank you.